In a world where technology increasingly dominates our security landscape, we've forgotten a profound truth. Nature's most sophisticated detection systems aren't built in laboratories, but born with beating hearts. Behind airport scanners and facial recognition software stands humanity's first guardian, the canine, whose senses operate in dimensions we've barely begun to comprehend. What if the gap between animal instinct and conscious intelligence isn't as vast as we believe? What if, within that space, lies an extraordinary potential that neither evolution nor science fully anticipated? Every day, across America's transportation hubs, K-9 officers detect threats that elude our most sophisticated equipment. Yet we seldom pause to consider the depth of awareness in those vigilant eyes. In their silent service lies a humbling reminder. Our perception of reality is merely a fragment of what exists. The thin veil between safety and catastrophe is often held in place not by technology, but by four paws and a heart that knows, beyond training or command, when something isn't as it should be. This is one such guardian story. A tale that might change how you see that German Shepherd patrolling your local airport and the unseen world he protects you from. The Sixth Sense. The Shadow's Guardian. Dawn painted the sky in shades of amber and gold as Hank surveyed his territory from the elevated vantage point of his backyard deck. The 6-year-old German Shepherd's posture remained vigilant, his ears perfectly erect, catching sounds far beyond human perception. This was his ritual, scanning the neighborhood with senses honed by both nature and intensive training. Officer Ethan Collins watched from the kitchen window, marveling at the dog that had transformed his life. Unlike other K-9 officers that went home with their handlers for convenience, Hank represented something far deeper. The bond they shared transcended the conventional partnership between handler and service animal. In Hank's dark amber eyes resided an intelligence that sometimes left even veteran K-9 trainers speechless. What made Hank exceptional wasn't simply his physical prowess, though his metrics at the K-9 Academy had shattered previous records. It wasn't just his near-perfect success rate in field operations, either. It was something the K-9 training division had coded in his file as anomalous intuitive capability, a clinical term for what Ethan recognized as something approaching a sixth sense. Hank's shoulders suddenly tensed, his attention fixating on something in the early morning mist. Then, just as quickly, he relaxed and trotted back toward the sliding glass door where Ethan waited with a freshly filled water bowl. Another day on patrol in Millhaven awaited them, a mid-sized coastal city where commercial fishing and cargo shipping created a unique security landscape. As they drove toward the regional airport for their morning shift, Ethan reflected on the journey that had brought them together. 3 years earlier, he had been assigned to evaluate a problematic rescue, a shepherd deemed unplaceable after being recovered from a suspected criminal operation. The dog had shown aggression toward handlers and had failed preliminary assessment tests. Something in those watchful amber eyes had spoken to Ethan. Where others saw liability, he recognized untapped potential. Against recommendations, he had requested special permission to work with the shepherd personally. The gamble had produced the department's most decorated K-9 officer, though few knew the full story behind Hank's extraordinary capabilities. Their police-issue SUV pulled into the reserved space at Millhaven Regional Airport. As a hub connecting smaller coastal communities to larger metropolitan areas, the facility operated both commercial and private flights. Hank's presence was part of the department's increased security theater, a visible deterrent that complemented the technical screening systems. What airport administration didn't fully appreciate was that in Hank, they had acquired a detection system that routinely outperformed multi-million-dollar equipment. His particular talent had saved lives on 3 documented occasions, and perhaps more that remained classified. The morning briefing highlighted nothing unusual. Routine cargo inspections, passenger screening support, and perimeter security checks filled their assignment board. Nothing suggested this ordinary Tuesday would become the day that placed Hank at the center of an international security incident, or that his mysterious past would suddenly become the key to preventing a catastrophe. Scent of deception. The private aviation terminal operated separately from the main concourse, catering to charter flights, corporate jets, and independently owned aircraft. Here, the security protocols balanced convenience for wealthy clients against necessary safety measures. Pilots with proper credentials moved through expedited channels, their familiarity with staff creating an atmosphere of casual recognition rather than rigorous verification. Hank padded silently beside Ethan, his nails clicking softly against the polished floor as they completed their third walkthrough of the morning. The terminal manager had requested their presence for what he described as routine high-value passenger arrivals, diplomatic staff from 3 countries connecting to private transportation. At precisely 10:17 a.m., Hank's demeanor transformed. The shepherd's fluid motion halted abruptly, his body becoming statue still except for the subtle flaring of his nostrils. Ethan recognized this change immediately, not the alert posture Hank displayed when detecting contraband substances, but something rarer and more significant. This was the shepherd's autonomous assessment mode, what Ethan privately called his processing stance. Hank's focus centered on a pilot walking confidently through the private terminal. Nothing about the man's appearance triggered concern. His uniform crisp, his documentation prominently displayed, his interactions with security personnel appropriately casual. He carried a standard pilot's briefcase of burnished leather, weather-worn at the corners from years of professional use. Captain Michael Reynolds, according to his credentials, commanded a privately owned Cessna Citation that regularly transported corporate executives between coastal cities. His flight plan that morning indicated a routine trip to San Francisco with 3 passengers. His security clearance had been updated 6 months earlier without incident. Hank's attention remained fixed, tracking the pilot's movement with unwavering intensity. Without command, the shepherd altered course, pulling Ethan toward the man with gentle but insistent pressure against his lead. This autonomous initiative, something Hank had never been explicitly trained to do, represented the mysterious quality that separated him from other service dogs. As they approached, Reynolds acknowledged them with a professional nod, seemingly unconcerned by the police K-9 unit. But Hank detected what human observers could not. A microsecond tightening around the eyes, a momentary elevation in heart rate betrayed by the faintest change in scent profile, the almost imperceptible adjustment of grip on the briefcase handle. When they drew within 5 feet, Hank executed a perfect specific alert maneuver, sitting precisely between the pilot and his intended path, his posture communicating unmistakable intention. His eyes never left the briefcase. Security protocols initiated immediately. A supervisor approached, informed Captain Reynolds of the required secondary screening, and directed him to a private inspection area. Throughout this process, Reynolds maintained professional composure, offering appropriate concern without resistance. His documentation remained impeccable upon review. When the briefcase was placed on the examination table, Hank's focus narrowed with laser precision. Not on the obvious compartments containing flight plans and navigation equipment, but on the seemingly solid base of the case itself. His behavior communicated certainty rather than suspicion. Advanced imaging revealed what visual inspection could not. A hidden compartment ingeniously built into the structure of the briefcase, containing specialized electronic components that bypassed standard security screening. Components that experts would later identify as trigger mechanisms for a sophisticated device designed to disable aircraft navigation systems mid-flight. The most disturbing discovery came hours later. Michael Reynolds' fingerprints matched no record in aviation databases despite his seemingly legitimate credentials. The real Captain Reynolds had been found unconscious in his hotel room, his identity meticulously duplicated by whoever now sat in federal custody. What remained unexplained was how Hank had detected the deception. The electronic components had been specifically engineered to avoid triggering conventional security systems and contained no substances that should have registered with even the most sensitive detection dog. The answer lay buried in Hank's mysterious past, a history about to resurface with implications that would extend far beyond the regional airport of a coastal town. Shadows of the past. Hank hadn't always been Hank. Before receiving this name at the Millhaven K-9 Academy, before his official police service began, the German Shepherd had existed in a shadowy dimension between legitimate security operations and something darker. The fragments of this history emerged slowly during the intensive federal debriefing that followed the airport incident. 3 years earlier, a joint task force had raided a compound hidden within the remote mountain terrain 70 miles from Millhaven. The operation targeted what intelligence had identified as a training facility for private military contractors operating outside legal parameters. What they discovered instead was an advanced program developing enhanced detection capabilities through specialized animal training. The facility had been mostly destroyed before the raid team breached the perimeter, documents incinerated, equipment demolished. Among the few assets recovered intact was a young German shepherd, malnourished, injured, and displaying severe behavioral issues. The dog bore no identification beyond a laboratory designation. Subject K137. Initial assessment deemed the shepherd unsuitable for rehabilitation. The behavioral specialists noted extreme distrust of humans, resistance to standard handling procedures, and assessment patterns that fell outside normal canine responses. What they interpreted as aggression, Ethan had later recognized as something else entirely. Hypervigilance coupled with analytical processing far beyond typical canine cognitive patterns. The classified file revealed fragments of the program's methodology. Subject K137 had been part of an experiment using specialized biochemical compounds to enhance olfactory discrimination. The objective was creating detection capabilities that could identify synthetic materials specifically engineered to evade conventional security screening, like the components found in Reynolds's briefcase. More disturbing was evidence suggesting psychological conditioning designed to create autonomous decision-making capabilities. Where conventional service dogs were trained to alert handlers to specific substances, Subject K137 had been conditioned to identify patterns, to detect inconsistencies in human behavior, stress markers, and deceptive intent. The federal investigators now connected these fragments to Hank's inexplicable performance at the airport. He hadn't alerted to a substance, but to a pattern of deception. The sophisticated electronic components combined with the impersonator's subtle behavioral inconsistencies had triggered recognition pathways implanted during his early training. As the interrogation of the false Reynolds progressed, intelligence analysts uncovered a broader operation. The electronic components represented a specialized system designed to interfere with aircraft navigation while providing false readings to monitoring systems. Had the plot succeeded, the aircraft would have deviated hundreds of miles from its flight path, eventually disappearing over open ocean with all evidence lost. The implication became clear. Whoever had created Hank's early training had anticipated precisely this type of sophisticated technological threat. His enhanced capabilities represented a countermeasure against deception techniques that conventional security systems couldn't detect. The shepherd carried within him specialized knowledge that now made him both invaluable to national security and potentially a target himself. Most significantly, the breakthrough with the false Reynolds provided the first substantial lead to the organization that had operated the Mountain facility, an entity known in intelligence circles only as Helix. Federal agencies had tracked their technological signatures across 5 continents, but had never identified operational personnel until now. As the investigation expanded, Ethan received instructions to bring Hank to a specialized facility in Washington. Their regional airport incident had unexpectedly placed them at the center of an international counterterrorism operation and had awakened ghosts from Hank's mysterious past that would soon emerge in unexpected ways. The Awakening. The Homeland Security Advanced Research Facility occupied an unmarked complex 30 miles outside Washington, D.C. Behind its unremarkable exterior lay some of the most sophisticated behavioral analysis technology in existence. Hank and Ethan arrived after dark, escorted through multiple security checkpoints to a specialized assessment area designed specifically for canine evaluation. Dr. Elise Takahashi, the lead behavioral scientist, had studied the fragmented records recovered from the Mountain facility for years. Meeting Hank represented the culmination of theoretical analysis, the living embodiment of the program she had reconstructed through partial documentation. His cognitive patterns are extraordinary, she explained as they watched Hank navigate a specialized testing environment designed to assess his information processing capabilities. He's not simply detecting scents, he's interpreting them contextually. The difference is profound. The assessment confirmed what Ethan had observed since their partnership began. Hank didn't simply alert to predetermined substances. He evaluated environmental patterns, making autonomous decisions based on integrated sensory information. This explained his ability to identify the false Reynolds despite the lack of conventional triggering compounds. More significant was the discovery that Hank's abilities could be enhanced through specialized protocols. Using controlled exposure to materials recovered from the briefcase, Dr. Takahashi demonstrated how his detection capabilities adapted dynamically, learning and incorporating new threat signatures without conventional training repetitions. The self-evolving nature of his detection abilities represented a capability beyond any existing security system. It also revealed why the organization that created him had attempted to destroy their research rather than let it fall into government hands. Hank represented a countermeasure against their most sophisticated technologies. On the third day of assessment, the first message arrived. It appeared simultaneously on secured networks across multiple federal agencies, a digital intrusion that bypassed advanced security protocols with unsettling ease. The content was simple, a sequence of numbers that initially appeared meaningless until analysts recognized it as coordinates for a location 70 miles from the original mountain facility. More disturbing was the message's signature, a molecular structure identical to compounds found in the specialized training materials used with Hank. This wasn't simply a security breach. It was a message specifically referencing the Shepherd's enhanced capabilities. The meaning became clear during the emergency briefing. They're acknowledging his disruption of their operation, the intelligence director explained. But more significantly, they're communicating directly with him. This interpretation seemed impossible until Dr. Takahashi demonstrated how the molecular structure, when synthesized and presented to Hank, triggered a specific recognition response. The compound contained chemical markers designed to activate neural pathways established during his early training, essentially a chemical language only he could understand. What emerged was a disturbing revelation. Hank carried within him conditioned responses to specific chemical markers, a form of programming embedded during his development at the mountain facility. The message represented an attempt to activate these embedded protocols remotely. The coordinates identified an abandoned industrial complex near the coastal shipping lanes, a facility that satellite surveillance confirmed had become operational within the past 72 hours. Intelligence assessment indicated high probability that it served as an active Helix operational center. Most concerning was the timeline. Analysis of shipping manifests and security footage revealed equipment consistent with the components found in the pilot's briefcase being transported to the facility, suggesting preparation for another, potentially larger operation. The decision came from the highest security levels. Hank would be deployed to the location with a specialized tactical team. His unique abilities represented the only reliable detection system against whatever technological threat was being prepared. The mission carried extraordinary risk, particularly given the unknown nature of the chemical triggers embedded in his training. As they prepared for deployment, Ethan witnessed something he had never seen before. A change in Hank's behavioral patterns suggesting recognition beyond conscious training. The Shepherd was responding to the mission parameters with anticipation that transcended conventional operational readiness. It appeared that Hank understood not just the immediate objective, but its connection to his own mysterious origins. The Shepherd was being drawn back toward the shadows that had shaped him, and toward a confrontation that would either complete his redemption or reclaim him for purposes far darker than anyone had anticipated. The reckoning. The coastal industrial complex loomed against the pre-dawn sky, its abandoned processing facilities transformed into what satellite imaging suggested was a sophisticated manufacturing operation. The tactical team established perimeter surveillance, confirming movement patterns consistent with an active production facility operating under disguised parameters. Hank's demeanor had shifted during the approach. The Shepherd moved with heightened awareness, his senses integrating environmental data with what appeared to be recovered memory patterns. This wasn't simply operational focus. It represented recognition, suggesting that somewhere within this complex lay connections to his origins. The operational plan designated Hank and Ethan as the primary assessment team, supported by tactical specialists positioned to respond to their findings. Their approach utilized the Shepherd's enhanced stealth training, moving through sensor dead zones identified through advanced electronic countermeasures. At the perimeter access point, Hank identified a pattern invisible to conventional detection systems, a specialized chemical compound applied to specific surfaces, creating a surveillance network that conventional scanning equipment registered as ordinary industrial residue. His response allowed the team to navigate through this invisible security grid without triggering alerts. Inside the primary structure, the operation discovered what intelligence had feared, an active production facility manufacturing the specialized electronic components found in the pilot's briefcase, but at a scale suggesting implementation far beyond a single aircraft. The operation had interrupted preparation of materials sufficient to compromise dozens of aviation systems simultaneously. Hank's behavior changed dramatically upon entering the facility's central research area. The Shepherd moved with absolute certainty toward a secured laboratory section, bypassing more obvious operational areas. Inside, they discovered documentation confirming their worst assessment. Project Helix had created a network of operatives with specialized training in aviation security penetration, positioned throughout transportation hubs across multiple countries. Most significantly, they uncovered the true purpose behind the attempted communication with Hank. Within specialized containment units, they discovered 6 German Shepherd puppies, subjects of the next generation of the program that had created him. These animals represented Helix's attempt to rebuild their specialized detection countermeasure program, using genetic material related to Hank's exceptional capabilities. The realization transformed their understanding of the airport incident. The false Reynolds hadn't simply been attempting to compromise a single aircraft. He had been evaluating Hank's capabilities, confirming whether the organization's former assets still functioned as designed. The electronic components in the briefcase contained chemical markers specifically formulated to trigger recognition in dogs enhanced through the Helix program. This explained why Hank had responded with autonomous intervention rather than standard alert procedures. He had recognized not just a threat, but a specific pattern connected to his own development, essentially identifying his creator's technological signature. As the tactical team secured the facility and rescued the puppies, Hank led Ethan to a secondary laboratory area where they discovered the most disturbing element of the operation. Specialized delivery systems had been prepared for deployment at major transportation hubs, devices designed to release compound patterns that would neutralize enhanced detection capabilities like Hank's while simultaneously masking the electronic signatures of their navigation-compromised technology. The true sophistication of the plot became clear. Helix had anticipated that their former asset might be deployed against them, and had developed countermeasures specifically designed to compromise his enhanced capabilities, essentially a chemical attack targeted directly at Hank's specialized neural pathways. The operation concluded with the facility secured and multiple Helix operatives in custody. Intelligence analysts would spend months processing the recovered materials, identifying compromised transportation security systems, and neutralizing embedded operatives throughout aviation infrastructure. The most significant outcome remained unreported in official briefings. During the operation, Hank had been briefly exposed to one of the specialized compounds designed to compromise his detection capabilities. Initial assessment suggested potential degradation of his enhanced functions, essentially a targeted attack on the very abilities that made him exceptional. As they departed the facility, Ethan noticed subtle changes in Hank's behavioral patterns. The Shepherd moved with a new awareness, not diminished capability, but transformed processing. He had somehow integrated exposure to the countermeasure compound, adapting his detection capabilities rather than succumbing to the intended neutralizing effect. This autonomous adaptation represented an evolution beyond even the advanced capabilities designed into his training, suggesting that Hank had developed something his creators had never anticipated: the ability to recognize and overcome their control mechanisms. Guardian of the Threshold. 6 weeks after the operation, Hank and Ethan returned to their morning ritual on the deck overlooking their coastal neighborhood. The federal debriefings had concluded, the international security implications processed through appropriate channels. The official commendation remained sealed in classified records, acknowledgement of service that would never be publicly recognized. The German Shepherd puppies recovered from the facility had been placed in specialized training programs, their development now guided by ethical protocols rather than the shadowy purposes intended by their creators. Their genetic connection to Hank ensured they carried potential for enhanced capabilities, though now directed toward legitimate security purposes. What remained unspoken in official reports was the transformation in Hank himself. Analysis confirmed what Ethan had observed since their return. Exposure to the countermeasure compounds had triggered unexpected adaptation in the Shepherd's specialized neural pathways. Rather than compromising his abilities, the exposure had catalyzed evolution beyond his original programming. Dr. Takahashi's final assessment had been carefully worded for security purposes, but clear in its implications. Subject demonstrates autonomous integration capabilities exceeding design parameters. Recommend continued monitoring under current handler protocols with expanded operational authorization. In practical terms, this meant Hank had broken free from the final constraints of his original conditioning. The chemical triggers embedded in his early training no longer functioned as control mechanisms. He had recognized and neutralized them, essentially rewriting his own programming. Their return to duty at Millhaven Regional Airport carried special significance. The transportation hub remained vulnerable to sophisticated technological threats, particularly as international shipping created continuous potential infiltration points. Hank's presence represented defense against threats specifically designed to evade conventional security systems. More profound was the understanding that Hank now operated with a level of autonomy unprecedented in service animals. He had transcended both his original training and conventional K9 protocols, becoming something unique in security operations, a fully autonomous detection system capable of recognizing and countering previously unknown threats. On their first day back on patrol, Ethan watched Hank survey the airport concourse with measured attention. The shepherd moved with purpose, integrating environmental information with analytical processing that combined his enhanced sensory capabilities with something approaching wisdom. In that moment, Ethan recognized the true significance of their partnership. Hank wasn't simply an exceptional detection dog, or even an enhanced security asset. He represented evolution beyond intended purpose, transformation from created tool to autonomous guardian. As they continued their patrol through the bustling terminal, Hank maintained vigilant awareness of his surroundings. Beyond the travelers rushing to connections and the airport personnel managing the complex choreography of modern aviation lay invisible threats designed specifically to evade detection. Against these shadows stood a guardian whose origins within darkness had transformed into something its creators never intended, an independent protector whose capabilities evolved beyond his programming. In Hank's watchful presence existed security that technological systems could never provide, the guardian instinct enhanced through understanding rather than control. The German shepherd moved confidently alongside his handler, his senses attuned to patterns beyond human perception. In his vigilant protection lay the most profound form of service, the silent sentinel standing eternally at the threshold between safety and harm, his extraordinary senses forever scanning the horizon for threats that others could not see. While the sixth sense weaves a fictional tale, the extraordinary capabilities of working K9s represent one of Homeland Security's most profound realities. Every day across America, thousands of German shepherds, Belgian Malinois, and Labradors serve as our first line of defense in transportation hubs, border crossings, and public venues. Their olfactory systems, with up to 300 million scent receptors compared to our mere 6 million, routinely detect threats that elude our most sophisticated technology. At Orlando International Airport alone, K9 teams intercepted over 200 prohibited items in 2022 that had bypassed electronic screening. What's most remarkable isn't just their sensory precision, but their ability to make complex contextual judgments. Dr. Michael Halstead, veterinary scientist at the Working Dog Center in Pennsylvania, notes, "We're only beginning to understand how dogs integrate multiple sensory inputs to form threat assessments, something our most advanced AI still can't replicate." Behind these capabilities lies a bond between handler and animal that transcends mere training. As retired TSA handler James Conner describes it, there's a moment when your partner alerts to something invisible to everyone else, and you trust that without question. That trust has saved countless lives. The next time you hurry past a K9 team at the airport, remember, some of our most sophisticated national security assets walk on 4 legs. Thank you for watching this heartfelt story. We hope it touched your heart and left you with something meaningful to reflect on. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, leave a comment to share your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more inspiring stories like this. Your support means the world to us. See you in the next video.